The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry bees as Marcus Washington pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Peterson Industries. At 2:47 a.m., the 42nd floor was a ghost town of empty offices and silent computers. But Marcus didn't mind the quiet. After 15 years of night shift cleaning, he'd grown to love these peaceful hours when the building belonged to him and his thoughts. Marcus had seen it all in these halls. Celebrations, heartbreaks, late-night deals worth millions, and personal phone calls that revealed more than any boardroom meeting ever could. But to most people who worked here, he was invisible, just another piece of the building's machinery, as forgettable as the elevator buttons or the water fountains. Tonight felt different though. As Marcus worked his way toward the executive suite, something gnawed at him. For the past 3 weeks, he'd noticed changes. Small things, things that everyone else seemed to miss or ignore. The CEO's office door stood slightly ajar, spilling golden light into the darkened hallway. Marcus hesitated. Richard Peterson, the 54-year-old company founder and CEO, rarely stayed this late. The man was known for his discipline. First in at 6 a.m., out by 6 p.m., home to his family in the suburbs. Through the crack in the door, Marcus could see Peterson hunched over his desk, his usually perfect silver hair disheveled. The executive's expensive suit jacket hung, wrinkled on his chair, and his tie was loosened, something Marcus had never seen in all his years here. But it wasn't Peterson's appearance that made Marcus pause. It was the way the man was moving, or rather, not moving. Peterson sat frozen, his right hand trembling slightly as he held a pen over a document. His left arm hung limply at his side, and there was something wrong with the left side of his face. It looked droopy, like he was trying to smile, but only half his face got the message. Marcus had seen this before. His grandfather, 20 years ago, the same drooping face, the same confused look, the same trembling hand trying to perform simple tasks that had become impossible. A stroke. Marcus's heart pounded as he watched Peterson struggle to write his own name on what looked like an important contract. The CEO kept starting and stopping, his signature coming out as illegible scribbles. Frustrated, Peterson threw the pen down and rubbed his forehead with his good hand. Every instinct told Marcus to walk away. This wasn't his business. He was just the janitor. Peterson had never even acknowledged his existence in 15 years. Why should he care now? But as Marcus watched the powerful man struggle alone in his office, fighting a battle his body was losing, something stirred in his chest. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. Marcus, baby, we're all just people underneath it all. Rich or poor, black or white, we all bleed the same color red. Taking a deep breath, Marcus knocked gently on the office door. Mr. Peterson. Sir. Peterson's head snapped up, and Marcus could see the panic in his eyes. The left side of the CEO's face was definitely drooping, and when he tried to speak, his words came out slurred and confused. I'm fine. Just. Working late. But Marcus could see he wasn't fine. Not even close. The two men stared at each other across the vast office. The millionaire CEO, in his $3,000 suit, and the night janitor in his worn uniform. In that moment, all the barriers of class, race, and social status seemed to dissolve. They were just two human beings, one in desperate need, and the other deciding whether to help. Marcus stepped into the office, his cleaning cart forgotten in the hallway. Sir, I think you might be having a stroke. Peterson's eyes widened with fear and confusion. He tried to stand up, but his left leg buckled beneath him, and he grabbed the edge of his mahogany desk to keep from falling. The movement sent papers and his coffee mug crashing to the floor. No, I'm just tired, Peterson insisted, but his words came out garbled, like his tongue had forgotten how to work properly. Drool began to form at the corner of his mouth, and he wiped it away with his good hand, embarrassed. Marcus had seen enough. He pulled out his cell phone, an old flip phone that his daughter always teased him about. Mr. Peterson, I'm calling 911. Wait, Peterson managed to say more clearly, panic giving him momentary clarity. You can single quotes the board meeting. Tomorrow the merger. Even in his condition, the CEO was worried about business. Marcus shook his head as he dialed. This man was literally having a stroke, and still thinking about meetings. 911, what's your emergency? This is Marcus Washington, at Peterson Industries, 1247 Commerce Street, 42nd floor. I have a man here who's having a stroke. We need an ambulance. Immediately. Is the patient conscious and breathing? Marcus looked at Peterson, who was now slumped back in his chair, his face pale and sweaty. Yes, he's conscious, but his speech is slurred. Left side of his face is drooping, and his left arm and legs seem weak. We have units on the way. Stay on the line with me. As they waited, Marcus did something he'd never imagined he'd do. He sat down in one of Peterson's expensive leather chairs, and really looked at the man. Not as the untouchable CEO, but as a human being in crisis. My grandfather had a stroke when I was 22, Marcus said quietly, his voice steady and calm. Scared the whole family. But you know what? He lived another 10 good years after that, because we got him help fast. Peterson looked at Marcus with new eyes. For the first time in 15 years, he was really seeing the janitor, not just as part of the building's background, but as a person who was saving his life. You work here. Peterson managed to say, his words still slurred, but clearer now. Yes, sir. Night shift janitor for 15 years. Marcus, Washington. He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Peterson shook it weakly with his good hand. Why? Peterson struggled with the words. Why are you helping me? Marcus was quiet for a moment, listening to the distant wail of sirens getting closer. Because it's the right thing to do, Mr. Peterson. And because ... He paused, searching for the words. Because I've been watching you for weeks now, and I could see something was wrong. The way you'd stop mid-sentence sometimes, or how you'd rub your left arm. Little things. Things that maybe your family or your executives might have noticed if they'd been looking close enough. Peterson's eyes filled with tears, not from the stroke, but from the realization that a man he'd never acknowledged had been watching out for him, had cared enough to notice what others had missed. I don't even know your last name, Peterson whispered, the admission heavy with shame. Washington. Like the president, Marcus said with a gentle smile. But don't worry about that now, Mr. Peterson. Right now, we just need to get you healthy. The elevator dinged in the distance, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps and rolling. Cliffman. The paramedics had arrived. In here, Marcus called out, then turned back to Peterson. You're going to be okay, sir. I've got a good feeling about this. As the paramedics rushed in with their equipment and started their rapid-fire questions and assessments, Peterson kept his eyes on Marcus, this invisible man who had become the most important person in the building tonight. Sir, we need to get you to the hospital immediately, the lead paramedic said. You're having a stroke, but the good news is, we caught it early. That's going to make all the difference. As they loaded Peterson onto the stretcher, he grabbed Marcus's hand with his good one. Come with me, he whispered urgently. But Marcus looked surprised. Sir, I should stay here, finish my shift. Please. Peterson's grip tightened. I don't want to be alone. For the first time in his life, the powerful CEO was admitting he needed someone, and that someone was the night janitor he'd never bothered to know. Marcus looked at the paramedics, who nodded their approval, then back at Peterson. Okay, Mr. Peterson, I'll come with you. St. Mary's Hospital at 4:30 a.m. was a place caught between night and day, death and life. The emergency room hummed with controlled chaos as Peterson was rushed through the automatic doors on the stretcher. Marcus jogging alongside, still wearing his janitor's uniform. The next few hours blurred together like a fever dream. Marcus found himself in a strange new world of medical terminology, concerned doctors, and waiting room coffee that tasted like burnt hope. He called Peterson's assistant, who had the emergency contact numbers, and soon the hospital filled with important-looking people in expensive clothes. Peterson's wife, Catherine, arrived first. She was an elegant woman in her early 50s, her blonde hair hastily pulled back and her face etched with worry. She rushed past Marcus without a glance, focused only on getting to her husband. Then came Peterson's adult children, Michael, a 28-year-old lawyer, and Sarah, a 25-year-old marketing executive. Both carried themselves with the same confident air as their father, but tonight they looked lost and frightened. Finally, the board members began arriving, men and women in sharp suits who spoke in hushed, urgent tones about the company, the merger, and what this meant for stock prices. But Marcus sat quietly in the corner of the waiting room, feeling more out of place by the minute. He thought about leaving several times, but something kept him planted in that uncomfortable plastic chair. Maybe it was the memory of Peterson's grip on his hand, or the fear he'd seen in the powerful man's eyes. Around 8 a.m., a doctor emerged from the treatment area. Dr. Sarah Chen looked tired but cautiously optimistic as she approached the group. Mrs. Peterson. I'm Dr. Chen. Your husband is stable, and we were able to give him medication to help dissolve the clot. The good news is that we caught this very early, thanks to." She looked around the room. Whoever called 911. That quick response likely saved his life and prevented significant brain damage. Catherine Peterson dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Thank God. When can I see him? He's resting now, but you can see him in a few minutes. I have to tell you, Mrs. Peterson, your husband was incredibly lucky. Most stroke patients don't get treatment this quickly. Someone was really looking out for him tonight. That's when Catherine noticed Marcus for the first time. She followed Dr. Chen's gaze to the quiet man in the janitor's uniform sitting in the corner. Excuse me, Catherine said, walking over to Marcus. Are you the one who found my husband? Marcus stood up, suddenly aware of how he must look among all these well-dressed people. Yes, ma'am. I worked the night shift at his building. Marcus Washington. Catherine's composure cracked, and tears began flowing freely. You saved his life. The doctor said if you hadn't called when you did, ... double quotes. She couldn't finish the sentence. I just did what anyone would do, ma'am. No, said Michael Peterson, who had been listening. Not anyone would have cared enough to notice, or brave enough to act. Dad never... He paused, looking embarrassed. Dad never mentioned you, but you knew him well enough to see he was in trouble. Sarah Peterson joined her brother and mother. How did you know? I mean, how did you recognize it was a stroke? Marcus sat back down, and the Peterson family gathered around him, like he was about to tell them the most important story they'd ever heard. My grandfather had a stroke when I was younger, Marcus began. But really, I'd been noticing changes in your father for weeks. Little things. The way he'd sometimes stop mid-sentence in his office, or how he'd rub his left arm during phone calls, how he started staying later and later, like he was having trouble finishing his work. I could see something was wrong, but I didn't think it was my place to say anything. You've been watching out for him, Catherine said softly. All this time, you've been watching out for my husband. Marcus nodded. I see a lot in that building at night, Mrs. Peterson. Your husband works harder than anyone. Sometimes I'd see him in his office at 2 a.m., and I'd worry about him. Tonight, when I saw him struggling to sign that contract, I knew what was happening. The family exchanged glances. They were learning more about Richard Peterson from his night janitor than they'd known from living with him. What contract? Michael asked. Looked like some kind of merger paperwork. He was trying so hard to sign it, but his hand wouldn't work right. That's when I knew for sure. Dr. Chen returned. Mrs. Peterson, your husband is asking for someone named Marcus. Is there a Marcus here? Every head turned toward Marcus, who looked surprised. He wants to see me. He's been asking for you since he woke up, Dr. Chen said. Are you family? Before Marcus could answer, Catherine Peterson spoke up firmly. Yes, he is family. Peterson's hospital room was a stark contrast to his opulent office. Here, surrounded by beeping machines and the antiseptic smell of industrial cleaner, the powerful CEO looked small and vulnerable. His left side was still weak, but his speech had improved dramatically thanks to the quick treatment. When Marcus walked in, Peterson's face lit up with the first genuine smile he'd managed since the stroke. Marcus, he said, his voice still slightly slurred but much clearer. You stayed. Said I would, Mr. Peterson. Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, Peterson admitted. But alive. Dr. Chen said, if you hadn't found me when you did, I could have died or been permanently disabled. You saved my life, Marcus. I just did what felt right. Peterson was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with emotion. 15 years, Marcus. 15 years you've worked in my building, and I never once asked your name. Never said good morning. Never acknowledged that you existed. Tears began to roll down his cheeks. But you knew me. You were watching out for me. How is that possible? Marcus shifted in his chair. Mr. Peterson, when you work the night shift like I do, you see people when they think nobody's looking. I've watched you work through birthdays, holidays, family events. I've seen you crying in your office after tough phone calls. I've seen you celebrating alone when deals went well. In a way, I probably know you better than most people in your life, and I never knew you at all. Peterson's shame was palpable. Tell me about yourself, Marcus, please. For the first time in his 15 years at Peterson Industries, Marcus talked about himself. He told Peterson about his wife, Gloria, who worked as a nurse at a community clinic. About his daughter, Jasmine, who was studying pre-med at the State University on a partial scholarship. About his son, Marcus Jr. who was serving in the army overseas. He talked about growing up in the inner city, about watching his parents work multiple jobs to keep the family afloat, about the night shift being the only work he could find, paid enough to support his family and help with Jasmine's college expenses. "I always wanted to go to college myself," Marcus said quietly. "But life had other plans. Sometimes you do what you have to do for the people you love." Peterson listened to every word, and with each story, his understanding grew. This man, this invisible man who had saved his life, was carrying dreams and responsibilities, and love just as heavy as his own. "Marcus, why didn't you ever apply for a different position at the company? Something during the day, with better pay?" Marcus gave him a look that was patient, but tinged with sadness. "Mr. Peterson, with all due respect, people like me don't usually get considered for positions like that at companies like yours. And even if I did apply, who would have known me well enough to give me a recommendation?" The truth hit Peterson like a physical blow. His company, his building, his empire, it was built on the work of people he'd never bothered to see. People like Marcus, who showed up every night to keep his world functioning, who cared enough to notice when he was in trouble, who had dreams and families and struggles he'd never even considered. "That's going to change," Peterson said firmly, his voice growing stronger. "Marcus, I want to offer you a position. A real position. Day shift. Management track. Full benefits." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Peterson, I appreciate that. I really do. But I don't want charity. If I earn a position, I want to earn it." "This isn't charity," Peterson said, struggling to sit up straighter in his hospital bed. "This is recognition. This is me finally seeing what was right in front of me for 15 years. You've been managing that night shift, keeping that building running, solving problems I never even knew existed. That's not charity, that's overdue." Before Marcus could respond, Catherine Peterson knocked and entered the room, followed by Michael and Sarah. "Dad, how are you feeling?" Sarah asked, kissing his forehead. "Better, much better." Peterson looked around at his family, then at Marcus. "I want to tell you all something. Marcus here didn't just save my life tonight. He opened my eyes to something I've been blind to for years." He turned to his children. "Michael, Sarah, I want you to work with Marcus to review our hiring and promotion practices. I want to understand why good people like him get overlooked. Catherine, I want to set up a scholarship fund, the Marcus Washington Scholarship for employees' children who are pursuing higher education." "Dad, that's wonderful," Michael said, "but maybe you should rest." "No," Peterson interrupted. "I've been resting for 15 years while life happened around me. Marcus, will you accept that position? And will you help me build a better company?" Marcus looked around the room at faces that had gone from strangers to something like family. In the course of one night, these people who lived in a world so different from his own, but who were learning to see him as he'd always seen them, as human beings worthy of care and respect. "Yes, Mr. Peterson, I'll accept." The Peterson Industries boardroom had never seen a presentation quite like this one. Marcus Washington, now wearing a crisp navy suit instead of his janitor's uniform, stood confidently at the head of the polished conference table. His new title, Director of Operations and Employee Relations, was printed on the placard in front of his seat. "The night shift initiative has exceeded all our projections," Marcus reported to the board. "By recognizing the skills and potential of our overnight staff, we've not only improved morale, but also identified solutions to problems we didn't even know we had." Richard Peterson, who had made a remarkable recovery from his stroke, with only slight weakness remaining on his left side, beamed with pride. The experience had changed him in ways that went far beyond the physical. His hair might have been a little grayer, and he might walk with a slight limp, but his eyes held a warmth that hadn't been there before. "Tell them about Maria," Peterson encouraged. Maria Gonzalez, one of our night custodians, noticed that the air conditioning system was running inefficiently on floors 15 through 20, Marcus continued. Her observation led to repairs that have saved the company $40,000 in energy costs this quarter alone. She's now part of our facilities management team. Around the table, board members who had initially been skeptical of the janitor's promotion now nodded approvingly. Results, after all, spoke louder than prejudices. "And the scholarship program?" asked board member Janet Richardson. "The Marcus Washington Scholarship has provided full tuition for 12 employees' children this year, including my own daughter, who's now in her senior year of pre-med." Marcus's voice carried a note of pride that made even the sternest board members smile. After the meeting, Marcus and Peterson walked together toward their offices. Marcus's new office was just down the hall from Peterson's executive suite. You know, Peterson said, pausing at the large windows overlooking the city. I used to think I built this company through vision and determination. But I was wrong. I built it on the backs of people I never bothered to see. You see them now, Marcus replied. That's what matters. Peterson nodded, then turned to his friend. And that's what Marcus had become. A true friend. My cardiologist says I need to take better care of myself. Less stress, more family time. I've been thinking about stepping back, maybe taking the chairman role instead of CEO. That sounds wise, Marcus agreed. I'd like you to consider the CEO position. Marcus stopped walking. Mr. Peterson, Richard, after everything we've been through, I think you can call me Richard. Richard, Marcus said with a smile. I appreciate the confidence, but I've been in this role for 6 months. Maybe we should see how I do for a few years before Marcus. Peterson interrupted gently. You've been watching this company and understanding its problems for 15 years. You've been a leader longer than you think. You just never had the title to go with it. That evening, Marcus arrived home to his modest but comfortable house in the suburbs. The same house, because he and Gloria had decided they were happy where they were, but now it was filled with new possibilities. How was your day, Mr. Director? Gloria teased as he walked through the door. Pretty amazing, Mrs. Washington. He kissed his wife and settled into his favorite chair. Richard offered me the CEO position. Gloria dropped the dish towel she was holding. The CEO? Marcus, that's incredible. What did you tell him? I told him I'd think about it. Marcus smiled. But I know what my answer's going to be. Just then, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Jasmine College. Hey, baby girl, Marcus, answered Dad. I got into medical school. Johns Hopkins. The scholarship program you started is going to help with the expenses. And I got a partial merit scholarship too. As Marcus listened to his daughter's excited voice, sharing her dreams and plans for the future, he thought about that night 6 months ago. How a moment of simple human kindness had changed not just to lives, but dozens of lives. How seeing and being seen had transformed an entire company. Dad, you still there? Yeah, baby, I'm here. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you too, Dad. You saved someone's life, and you changed everything for our family. But mostly, I'm proud because you showed me that it doesn't matter what job you have. What matters is the kind of person you are. After hanging up, Marcus sat quietly for a moment, thinking about Peterson's offer. CEO of a Fortune 500 company. A boy from the inner city, who had started as a night janitor, now being offered the chance to lead one of the largest corporations in the state. But more than that, he thought about all the other Marcus Washingtons out there. The invisible people doing essential work, carrying dreams, supporting families, and waiting for someone to notice their value. Gloria sat down beside him. So, are you going to take it? Marcus smiled, his decision clear. Yeah, I think I am. Someone's got to make sure we keep seeing the people everyone else overlooks. Outside their window, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing a life, a story, a person worthy of being seen. And in boardrooms and executive suites across the country, the ripple effects of one night's compassion continued to spread. Because sometimes, the most important moments in life come not from the people we expect to matter, but from the ones we never thought to notice. Sometimes, the person who saves your life is the one you've been walking past for 15 years. Sometimes, being truly seen is the most powerful thing of all.